Welcome to Out of the Teapot podcast, a podcast where we share incredible journeys of Zimbabweans who have stepped out of their comfort zones and into new countries, cultures, and experiences. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories of life beyond borders. Whether you're part of the diaspora or just curious about life abroad, there's something here for everyone. Tune in, get inspired, and discover the world beyond the teapot. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on social media, and share your thoughts with the hashtag Out of the Teapot podcast. Okay, today I have a special guest. I will let her introduce herself.
That is so hard to do. My name
I
is
mean,
Brenda Mang. I don't share the full government, but if you know me, you know me. My name is Brenda Mang. That's my social media name, I guess. I guess I'm a content creator. I'm Zimbabwean. I'm out of the teapot. I'm a
yay.
content on the internet. I'm a content creator. The first Black plus size model in Ireland. And yeah, I've just been living life in Ireland for like 22 years now. So over half of my life I've been in Ireland. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's me.
Nice. Thank you for introducing yourself. Like, it's so hard to introduce. Like, whenever I have to introduce myself, I'm like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I?
I know
Um,
you never know what to say. You never know what to pick out and be like, okay, this is what I want people to know.
exactly, exactly. Okay, so you have lived in Ireland for 22 years. Let's go back like to you living in Zim. What do you remember about living in Zim? How was it for you and all that?
Yeah, Zim was good. Like for me, we left in the 2000s, like super early 2000s, 2002. So I have a memory of Zim before things went all the way left. But growing up, I think, from what I remember, life was very comfortable. I feel like when I speak to other people, it's only from having conversations with other people and different backgrounds that you're like, oh, I actually lived a very privileged life. So I was very comfortable. Didn't want for nothing at all. And, I remember even for grade 7, everyone was running around trying to apply for schools and for high school. I didn't do any of that. All I did was just go to my exams, did my exams, got my results, and then come January, I remember my mom's sister was like, "Oh, you need to tell us where you want to go to high school." And I was like, "Oh, I guess I'll just go where my friends were," because I by that time people had gotten their acceptance, whatever. So I
Mhm.
was just like, I didn't even consider the school, like anything about the school, whether it was a good school, what am I going to get from the school? I just followed my friends. And I remember they wanted me to, my mom specifically wanted me to go to Hillcrest because at that point in time, my mom was already in Ireland, and
Oh, okay.
her sister, they were like, "Oh, your mom wants you to go to Hillcrest." I was like, "I don't know anyone there. I would rather go where my friends weren't."
Right.
And that's how I got high school. And when I got there, I was a daytime scholar, and all my friends were boarders. And I was like, "Hi, my Nini, I also want to be a boarder." And then the
Right.
next day, they put an extra bed in for me, and I was good. So like I was very, very privileged. I was connected. I related to people who had influence at the time and could
Right.
open doors. So I feel like my life in Zim was okay. Like I had zero complaints. It wasn't until I moved, my parents obviously moved to Ireland and I started living with my grandmother. That's when I was like, dang, okay, because we are kumusha, do you know what I mean? So it was a whole 180 from living in the city,
Oh.
and then we got an abuya, and that's how I kind of um matured because I was now exposed to, because we obviously used to visit our grandparents, but
Mhm.
it was during for one day at a time, couple of days,
There was a
weekends.
different reality, right?
Very different when you're not living with them because like kwenda kumunda, like naifuza mombe, kukama mombe, all of that stuff. Yeah, and then And there was the Papa Inichigayo, like by Duze, next to my grandparents' plot. Um, so there would always be queues of people, especially there was a time where Chibage was scarce and
Right.
it was hard to find, but people would then queue Kuchigayo just to see if they can get something from somebody. And Dains Nambuya, oi, ma frizit, and I'm not thinking some frizit. Kuno Noga Mirida, Pachigayo, that kind of vibe. Like,
Mhm.
so it became like a whole 180 of life where I was just like, okay, I'm now the girl and I think some frizit. Okay, it is what it is. Like to me, that was no more people would knock on the gate because my grandmother sold a lot of stuff. Like we had guavas, mangoes, matoe, so many different. We had cherries. Like she
Yeah.
had an orchard. We had paddocks and paddocks of different things. So we be like I was exposed to this kind of like hustle that she didn't even need to do, but I guess that was just her way of life. And that kind of made me call my mom, like, I don't want to live here no more. This is too much for me. Um,
Oh, wait,
so,
sorry. I want to jump back a little bit before we
okay.
get to you going. I want to talk to like about like when your parents left. How was that
Mhm.
situation? How old were you and how was it living away from your parents initially? I mean, I know that usually like in Zim we're literally close knit with our parents and when they move it's usually a lot.
Yeah, it wasn't that difficult. It was, first of all, back then, I don't know if they still do it now. No one would say that they're leaving to go to the UK or to abroad, wherever, whether it was the USA or the UK. It was
Mm.
always referred to as the UK, regardless of where you ended up
Where
in the
you're
world.
going, yeah.
You could have been in Australia, Canada, USA, anywhere, and people would just say, "I'm going to the UK."
Right.
For me, we didn't. There was this. It was a secret. It was you don't tell anybody. So I'm
Right.
a 8-year-old kid. My brother is like 10. So we, kids at that age, we can't keep a secret. So we weren't really told anything,
Uh,
because we would
you
probably
don't
end up
yeah,
saying it innocently.
right.
So we weren't really told, but I remember the week leading up to it, I used to get taken to school by like a carpool, like would have a driver and all that kind of stuff. But my mom
Mhm.
started taking me to school that week, and I would be like, this is suspicious. First of all, she also has a job. So why isn't she at her job now? And she
Yeah.
has time to take me to school. And I'll
Girl,
never
are you
forget the day that
unemployed?
I was usually like, what's going on? Why is she available?
Right.
Why is she not working? And yeah, that's when she told me on her second last day,
Yeah.
she was due to fly the next day. And she was like, okay, so I'm going to be gone for a while because my mom went first and I'm going to Ireland. And I remember thinking, what the heck is Ireland? Like we knew London, we knew
Bye.
America, and I was like, what is island? I assumed that she meant an island as in ISLAND. So I'm still waiting for her to tell me which island it is because we have loads. So I'm like, what the heck is Ireland? And I'm like, oh, okay. She was like, so I won't be back for a while. You're not going to see me around, but I'll be okay. And then um I remember she did this in a hair salon. We were both getting our hair done. And the girls always, you and your hairdresser are like this. So I visited those hairdressers like for all my life. And I remember they understood the magnitude of what my mom was telling me, but I was oblivious. I was like, oh, okay,
Okay.
all right,
See you when
cool.
you're back.
Yeah, see you back. So it wasn't until my mom actually left me in the salon, and then the girl started telling me properly like what's actually going on. And then I was like, wait a minute, no, I don't want my mom to go. What do you mean she's gonna be like going on an airplane, all of that, all of that.
Mhm.
So it was a very kind of it wasn't a big thing.
Right.
Very few people
Right.
knew. And we didn't even take her to the airport because it was in the middle of a school term. My dad did that, and then she went to Ireland, and we went to stay with my grandmother because my dad was always away on business, so it made more sense for us to live with my grandmother. And when we went to live with my grandmother, it was before my mom left, so she had treated it as if like, oh, we're just going to go spend more time with your grandmother, just kind of vibe. And we were like, okay, so it all then in hindsight, I was completely oblivious. But they did try and tell us, and it wasn't easy. Um, Kind of like I said, having that life of being a city girl that had a whole different meaning back then. Being a city girl, and now you're staying kumusha kind of vibe.
Right.
Um, so that was the hardest adjustment. And then obviously, like I love my grandmother. My grandma parents are amazing. So there was never any kind of like, oh my God, I wish I wasn't here. It was mostly just kind of like the work that was involved
Yeah,
in
yeah.
being part of the household. And that was the biggest shock for me. And that was what I didn't particularly enjoy. But looking back, I'm very grateful for it because it really set me up. Like if I had gone from city girl, like the girl that was in the city and moved
Yeah.
straight to here, I would be what my mom calls bodza. You know, munasina boni kuja anything, that kind of
I
thing.
hear
So
you. I
I'm
hear
super
you.
grateful.
So how long was it before like you could got to Ireland, like after your mom left?
2 years.
2 years.
So
Because those two
yeah,
years
she
were deep inside the commercial vibe.
fam. It was crazy. I it became a part of my identity. I was no longer waiting to leave. It got to a point where I was always kind of like, okay, we're here temporarily, but then
Right.
it became, okay, I'm here. This is my
Survive.
life now.
What we do it.
Yeah, let's just do what we need to do and just get on with it. And yeah, that was it was 2 years. And she'd come and visit quite frequently. She always visited during the school term holidays.
Mhm.
And I remember just thinking, Jesus, she's gaining weight. Oh my gosh. And she's getting lighter.
Oh,
Because she's on this cold island, there's no
right.
sun.
Oh,
So it was, and and the food, I guess, the food here it
uh,
wasn't the best.
here is never
So
the best.
it was horrible. So like I remember just when she would visit, I'll just be like, oh my God, my mom looks so different. And then um one day, after all of that hoopla of getting me into high school, about a couple of months in, my dad was like, oh, I need to take you out of school to go get some pictures. And
Oh,
I was like, okay, why? Just he was just like, no, you just need to get some photos done. And again, keeping it on the hush hush. So he was basically talking about passport photos.
right.
And we went into town. I got my passport photos taken. Me and my brother also came from his boarding school because he was in boarding school in Nyanga,
Mhm.
and I was in boarding school in Majare. And we both were like,
Got
what's going
married.
on? We just because we used to travel, that wasn't a big thing. Like I remember we used to go on holidays and travel, so it was, I don't know whether we needed passports to travel within Africa. We never traveled outside of Africa, but we'd go to like South Africa and stuff by car. So I don't know if we ever needed passports. I don't recall ever having. No, our passports were on our mom. Do you remember back in the
Oh yeah,
day
yeah.
you could
Back
have
in the day, your passport would be with your mom, and I
on
think
your
that
parent?
because I think
Yeah,
I
it was literally part of your parents' passports. Yeah.
yeah. Oh
So
wow.
we didn't need them until now we're moving to the diaspora. Because I was like, how did we used to travel back in the day? Because now we're getting passports. So we got our passport photos done. Next thing, we're getting passports. And then my dad still is not saying anything. He hasn't given us a reason as to why
African.
this is happening. And like I said, me and my brother had been away from our mom for so long that we weren't even thinking that we
Yeah.
were gonna go join her.
Mhm.
So I remember talking to my mom on the phone,
Right.
and she was saying, okay, um, I'm gonna need you to pack jeans. And she was describing all the clothes that obviously she should bring for us. She'd be like, because I was obsessed with these Nike Airs. She was like,
Yeah.
I need you to pack this and this and this. Make sure you pack loads of underwear. Make sure you pack juicy, bunny juicy, wardrobe, about this and this and this. Pack that. Um, and then obviously for my brother as well. And then we still weren't
Like,
processing. Remember,
what is this
we're like
holiday?
10-year-olds. We're literally like 10-year-olds at this point. So like our brain is not functioning in that way where we're thinking about all of that.
Mhm.
And that's when we went back to school. So we would be doing all of this, but still going back to school. We were boarders. And
Right.
then one day my dad just came. Next thing, like I'm having a going away thing with my class. because my dad had told the school that okay, she's leaving. I'm being picked up, we're going, I'm seeing my brother Kwambuya, and then next thing they're saying we're going to Harare. And like Tegara Kwamutare, like going to Harare for me was like it was a thing.
Yeah.
You know, like you're going to the big city. So I'm like excited thinking what's going on. Obviously, I had loads of relatives that lived in Harare, but I never really visited them like that unless we had like family occasions.
Um,
So that was how we were told and how we did that transition. But at that point in time, most of our family knew that we were going abroad. And I'll never forget one of my cousins. They all came to see us off at the airport. And like one of my cousins, he's such a jokester till this day. He's just like, said Chabona in 2 days, my deport ka." I'm like,
what is
and
that?
I need you to understand, I was 10. The concept of deportation did not exist to me. So I was confused as to what that meant because he was a bit more cultured. So he knew what he was saying. But I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But looking back, I was like, hater. Obviously, he was joking. But it was a real thing that once it was explained to me, it became a fear of mine. And me and my brother, we traveled as unaccompanied minors. So my mom didn't come and get us. We were literally just those
Oh,
kids with the tags.
with your dad.
No.
Yeah. Do you even remember how it was just going, like just two minors going?
Yeah, it was great. I don't even know if we traveled economy because I have very, very little recollection. But I remember we would be in the first class lounges, and my brother, he cracks me till this day when I think about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's such a stickler for rules.
Oh,
They would put us in these first class lounges. I guess they could keep an eye on us,
oh.
and they had toys and everything. And my brother would be like, "Karabas, somebody chill." And I'm like, we're under, like, it's a layover.
How
There's
old
loads of,
was he at that time?
it was like 11
Oh my
or
goodness,
12.
look at him being like a deputy parent for real, for real.
But when I tell you, like, living without our mom matured us to the next level. And obviously, I'm listening to my big brother.
For real, for real.
hmm So that's how we traveled. And we landed in Dublin. And we had been told what to say when we get to the thing. We were told, this is our mother's phone number. She's waiting outside. You can give her a call. And then that's exactly what they did. And we weren't there for long. Once they called and located my mom at the arrivals, we went through. And that was how our life in Ireland began. Obviously, there was lots of tears, reunion. My mom is relieved that her children that she just sent on big, big airplanes by themselves.
Hey,
It's
fam.
crazy.
And how
It's
was it like
crazy.
leaving your dad and your go-go? Was there a lot of like I'm sure by the time like when you left school, you were kind of aware that maybe we're going to our moms and like how is it being like being split in those like oh my God, we're leaving our dad behind and our go-go and oh my God, we're gonna
Yeah.
meet your mom.
It was, to be honest, I was excited because we weren't told that we're going to live with our mom. It
Okay,
was more so proposed as a holiday,
right.
right? It wasn't because, again, if we were to talk about it, they
Mhm.
didn't want people to know the extent of, whatever was happening.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's usually like less people will tell you like for real that we are moving
I
today. Nobody's telling. Ain't nobody's.
Nah, they didn't. Nobody was telling anything, but it wasn't hard. My dad was always away on business, so it wasn't too difficult, and we had open lines of communication.
Mm,
So it was kind of like even if people weren't there, they were always there.
mm,
So like phone calls every single day, kind of thing. So you didn't feel like you were far, far away from them, and again, it was easier to part thinking it's a temporary situation. You're only coming for a few months or a couple of weeks because
right.
when my mom said she just emphasized just pack warm clothes,
Yeah,
but we didn't pack big, big suitcases. We literally had hand luggage and that was it.
my God. She made sure you had the things that you like you really were fond of and would really miss, and then the rest was
hmm
just Okay, that's it. Okay, so at which point, like, how was it like just in the, I'm not sure you even remember, but like just in the first days and up to like when did you realize that, you know what, this is it, we're not going back?
When we got here, we got the full 411. Once we landed and we were here, because I think the secrets were about not saying anything and then being prevented some way, somehow, whether it's kuroiwa or,
Yeah.
technicalities.
All those people who are wishing you to get deported.
Now, my cousin was joking. I know he was joking, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, I didn't even think about, so it
I
made
think
me
it
a little
also
bit scared.
happened a lot, like a lot during that time as well. So I think it
Yes.
was also a thing of also like pre-warning you, though you were too young to understand that this might actually happen. And yeah.
Exactly. Like looking back, that's why I always say I don't think he said it in malice. Because till this day, he's just one of those people that just says the most wayward things as a joke. Um, but it was once we got here, everything was now fully explained. We came in June, so it was summer, so the weather was warm enough.
Mhm.
Um, and then school didn't start until September, so we had about 3 months worth of to acclimatize ourselves with the culture, with um, just the fact that this is home for us now and we're not going back. Um, so yeah, it was she said it to us as soon as we were sure that we were here. Then it was like, okay, so this is the full story. This is where you live now.
He's home now.
This is home. Hmm.
And how was it like settling in school and stuff for you?
Man, these are memories that I had locked away in like the back of my mind. Um, because I mean, in Zimbabwe we speak English. That's is one of our official languages. But a lot of countries are very ignorant to that. So you have a lot of people who would ask. So my first day of school,
Hmm.
um, so how school works here, I went straight into the equivalent of Form 2, because age-wise and academic-wise, I was at that level where I can just start in Form 2, even though I was 12. At that
Okay.
point in time, I turned 12 once I got here. Um, I was technically 12 is also too young to be in Form 2, even if you're in Zim. But I was always quite the youngest in my class anyway, even in Zim, because I started at 5 years old instead of 6 when I started primary school. So when I first got here, so how it works is the same way that it works in Zim, that you have a home class and then every other subject is a different teacher. So they were all obviously made aware of the fact that there's a new student joining the class,
Yeah.
and the teachers would be coming in like, um, they would address the rest of the students and be like, all right, guys, so we have a new student. She's just coming to us from Zimbabwe, and she is, I'm sure you've all met her, da, da, da. So let's just all help her get used to everything, da, 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 da. And then turn to me and be like, hi, I am Mrs.
Oh my
For
goodness.
this, for the sake of the conversation, Mrs. Smith. I will be your geography teacher. So we're going to start. Do you have your books?
You don't get out of my face, man. What do
I
you mean?
remember being confused because I'm like, is she okay? Why is she talking like? Because at no point did my brain register that she's talking like that because she thinks I'm
I
slow or I can't speak English. It didn't cross my mind because that was not even something that was in my mind. So I'm there thinking, is she okay? Like, why
God.
is she talking like that? And then slowly but surely, as every single teacher, you have 8 or 12 subjects in a day,
Right.
the 8 people are all having this same thing. And I'm like, huh? What is going on? And then it wasn't until like we reached break time. All the girls are trying to talk to me, trying to get to know me. And obviously people are intrigued and interested in you. And they're like, your English is so good for someone who's only been here for 3 months. Oh my gosh, you learned English so quickly for someone who's only been here since June. Oh my gosh. I'm like, we speak English in Zimbabwe.
Like
We speak
whenever
English in
I'm
Zim.
applying for things and there's that whole proficiency for English thing, I click native. But I've been a native speaker. I'm not I don't care where you think I'm
It's an
from.
official language. It's crazy. So I was so confused. And then I started clocking it slowly but slowly. Me and my brother obviously talk about our experiences, and my mom now contributing to the conversation when we're at home. And people are asking us, did we have lions? Did we hunt? Did we live in the trees? Did we live with the monkeys? And they were asking us very seriously. There was a point in time during one of our classes, we were talking about our favorite TV shows, childhood TV shows. So I'm
Yeah.
out here naming Power Rangers, all of that. And they're like, how did you how did you watch those shows, Brenda?
In the tree.
In the tree. We could, dongle the satellite dish somehow. So yeah, so I had to like tell them the harsh reality of living in Zimbabwe and be like, no, we had TV.
Yeah.
So we I could watch all of those shows, and they were so confused as to how is that possible. And it was so once I became wise to the fact that, okay, ignorance exists because I had never experienced any kind of discrimination, racism, ignorance in any way living in Zim because even though our school was it had a lot of diversity, it was never a thing. Like we never made it a thing to be like, oh, there's white girls over there, white boys over there, Indian people. We were just children in school. It was never a thing. And so being now in this place where I'm hoping people would just look at me as another human being, I was now exposed to this ignorance. And then being in a position to teach people as a 12-year-old, you're teaching
That
people.
responsibility as a young kid.
It's a lot. It was a lot for me. And I absolutely, I started um, going with the flow. So if someone was to ask me a stupid question, I'm like, did you have TVs? I'm like, no, no, we didn't. I don't even know what a remote control is. Um, because I got tired of having to constantly educate people.
And
And
I think
I'm
that's
sure
here anyway. So like be there with your prejudices.
exactly. And then slowly but surely, I was the only black girl in the whole school. And then a couple of years went by, and there were two twins, black girls that joined the school. And we instantly became friends because I was like, oh my God, finally, people that look like me.
Mm,
And
I'm
back
happy.
then, you know, and even in my neighborhood, we were the only black family. And I'll never forget the day that we saw these two boys walking. There were two black boys walking, and immediately went, who are they? We need to talk to them. And that's what we did, and we're best friends till this day. um because it was so like we were in the country, so we weren't in Dublin, we were in Wicklow. So we were like in the country where there's less and even less diversity than you would have found in the main cities like Dublin. So it was a big culture shock, a big adjustment, realizing I didn't know I was black until then, if that makes sense.
I,
Like I really
I
genuinely did not know I was
think
black.
a couple of guests have highlighted that, like how their blackness, that just like their blackness was highlighted the moment that they came to this country. I think I was even reading a book where the first sentence is, when I arrived in the city, I officially became black. It's crazy.
That's how it works.
It's
It's just
harder,
kind of
especially if you're a kid, because you're trying to reconcile the you that you've known and the you that you are now. Especially back then, I think there was immigration, yes, but I don't know if it was really that much. Like you said, you were in the country, so it wasn't many people who were going there. It wasn't like a big city. So it's obviously going to be like different for you as well.
Very. And a lot of people that did migrate, especially moving from like African countries to the West, they were focusing mainly on Australia and the USA and UK.
Hmm.
Ireland was like at the very bottom of everyone's list. It actually had been at the bottom of a lot of people's list up until recently.
Yeah,
Um,
you're actually my second island guest, so I'm so happy about that because
yeah,
it's
because you were speaking with Diana.
yeah, I was speaking with Diana a couple of weeks ago as well. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about like growing up, like okay, like the initial stages you were a kid, like being a teenager in that space. And also, did your skills set you up, like the skills that you got from kumusha? I'm sure Mboya was letting you, was making sure to you know how to make sadza. And given that your mother must have been busy as well, did that come in handy in like helping to run the household now that you are?
Of course. Yes, 100%. I started cooking even before I was living with my grandmother. I was always curious. Like, me and my brother were very picky eaters, and I'll never forget, even when we would get like helpers, the first test that my mother would do is the food and whether we would eat it or like it. And nine times out of ten, we were always like, nope. So one time I remember um the maid, the helper, sorry, back in the day we used to say maids, but that is no longer politically correct. So let me correct myself and say the helper that we had, she was new. My parents had gone for the weekend because we managed another house. There was a different business that they needed to check on every now and then. And so they were gone there for the weekend. It was just me, my brother, and our helper. And we had put in a meal request of what we wanted to eat, but she was not understanding what we wanted to eat. So she cooked something that was not nice.
Mhm.
And me and my brother took matters into our own hands and decided to cook. And I was 6 and he was 8 or 9. So you can imagine like a 6-year old, the food was terrible. Oh, we made absolute shambles of it. Um, it was absolutely horrible. The helper was crying because she was like, "You kids are being mean to me.
Oh,
Like, what did I do? Like, you're gonna make me lose my job if your parents find out." And we're like, "How are they gonna know if you tell them? Like, no one's gotta know anything."
oh,
We made a mess of cooking. We didn't even end up eating our own food. But that sparked that curiosity in me to be like, listen, I do want to learn how to cook. So I just stayed in the kitchen a lot more and I started cooking. And yes, of course, moving to live with my grandmother once, you know, wait, at your grandmother's house, that's where all of your cousins come. Every time people would come over for the weekend, we're all taking part. We're all in the kitchen, we're all cooking. It's very, very a typical setup where the girls are in the kitchen, the boys are outside. And so it really did help. We were very, very, and also the fact that we lived as boarders, we were very, very independent. We didn't necessarily need mom there 24/7. So when she was out working, and nurses' shifts, they're like 12 hours, that's the whole day gone. So you kind of had to be self-sufficient. And so thankfully we had those skills to help us kind of just, there was no gap. Like there was nothing lacking when we transitioned from Zimbabwe to Ireland in terms of just kind of being independent. We didn't have to kind of figure it out whilst we got to Ireland. We already knew what we were doing. The only thing we had to figure out was switching on a gas stove without blowing up the entire house.
I'm still scared of gas stoves until this day.
I love gas stoves because they cook everything so much faster. Because kumusha nambuya taibikira pachoto. So waiting for an electric stove to heat up is the bane of my existence. But nowadays, the newer ones, they're great. But back in the day when you have those white stove tops, they were so slow. Especially if it was an older stove as well. So I prefer gas 100%.
Okay, so how was it being a teenager in like Ireland, given that, being a teenager in Zim is a lot, like, and you're under lock and key, but like you're now in this freer country. How was that for you?
Well, by that time, my dad had joined us shortly after. So it was now me, my mom, my dad, my brother. And I never experienced being a teenager in Zim, but I will never forget one thing my parents always used to say was Kunzoko, ku island, but Mbamno, Zimbabwe. To the extent where even in our house we didn't speak English. We spoke Shona, which shocked a lot of people when they hear me speak. Even till this day, I'm filtering my accent a little bit because
Mhm.
I always get made fun of how manika it actually is. But it's because in my household, we were in Zimbabwe and out there was Ireland. And because I didn't grow up under lock and key. My parents were not strict people. They were
Yeah,
very rational people and they gave you very rational reasons about what you can't and cannot do and why you can't and cannot do them. And I understood that. I never felt like I was but I didn't do a lot of the things that my counterparts did, like my fellow Irish counterparts did. Even some of my Zim people did.
yeah.
Because for me, the way that the values that they had instilled
Zimin
in me
Island.
Zim in Ireland, that, like the values they had instilled with me just inherently became part of me. So I never had any desire to run out of the house or to lie about where I was going or to drink, smoke, what all the other teenagers were doing. I did like a good party though. So I would fight to go to a party. And then the
You have a
compromise with
curfew.
my parents. Hmm?
You have a curfew like in high school.
I didn't have a curfew because I was not supposed to go out in the first place.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about a curfew when you're not even supposed to be outside?
It's supposed to be outside. I hear you. My mom used to say, usatangirwe kupinda muna mai vako nezuva. So until when the sun is going down, they say zuva rakupinda muna mai varo. So
Hmm.
you should be first. Before zuva raenda kuna mai varo, you should be where your mom is.
Mm,
I'm like,
exactly. Like, and I would see that I would learn that from other people and from TV that people had curfews. But because for me, after your school activities, whatever you're doing, I played basketball and hockey and all of that. After that, my house was like a 15-minute walk from school.
yeah,
And sometimes if my parents are home, one of them would pick me up from school. Me and my brother went to different schools. We get home, do our homework. We focus very much on academics. We weren't really um, bothered, to be honest with you. We really did not care for the outside. Um, but we never felt like we were missing out because our parents still gave us good experiences. Like if it was a case where there was a family occasion, family parties, they were still doing that. We still managed to make friends, whether we were going to church or oh, so and so is having a 16th birthday party. Okay, we're all going. All of us are going. It's a family party, so that's how we managed to connect with our fellow Zimbabweans in Ireland and make friends and, experience that kind of side of life. But it was, and slowly but surely, making friends that were also in the same kind of household. They had big sisters who would then vouch and say, I'm going to take Brenda and my little sister, because I would be friends with the little sister, to a party. These are the details. This is where we're going. And if my parents trusted you enough, then they would let us go. So that's how I would experience the outside world
yeah.
without having to go through strife and struggle with my parents or having to beg and plead or feel like I'm missing out because what I was exposed to was enough for me in a way. So I don't know. I never really in fact, I was a very judgmental teenager. That's what I would say. When I would see other teenagers smoking and drinking, I was
Like,
judgmental.
what are they doing?
I'm like,
When do
do
I
your parents know?
when do I cheat? Jesus.
Yeah. It
Were you
was
one
so
of those
bad. Like
people who would go and report like to your mom? Like other people
mm-mm,
would
mm-mm,
like
mm-mm. See,
you.
I was smart. I never
Yeah.
reported anybody. It was none of my business, but I would judge you.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, if I reported that Tade is smoking, if you're at a party that I want to go to, now
Yeah.
I can't go to that party.
Ah, you were smart. You
You
were
get what I mean? So
yeah.
you don't snitch on anyone, but I would just quietly judge because I'd be like, "Kutafuta kumadoro." Now that this is me, I know I know why you're laughing because we know what I'm like now. But you're asking me about 20 years ago. And that was me 20 years ago. I was part of the youth programs in church. I was part of I was literally, part of we would do the youth camps. So I felt like I would socialize enough in that way, where we're going to Bible camps, we're going to Christian camps, summer church camps, and all of that kind of stuff. And all my friends were also into the same things. So I never had people that were doing the outside stuff where I would feel like I was missing out. Because, like I said, the way I don't know how my parents did it, but whatever they did, it was so ingrained in me that it was all I knew. And so I didn't feel like I would be missing out on the outside world because that was for a different type of person, you know?
Did you have an allowance? Because I'm trying to see how Zim parents how Zim parents were like in the diaspora and at home. Because at home you'd be like only lunch books, only everything. Like why do you need an allowance? Did you get an allowance at home?
In Zim and in Ireland, yeah, I did. We did. We again, I feel like my parents were always focusing on trying to make our life as comfortable as possible. I could never, the words struggle can never cross my lips because even if they did, they sheltered us from it.
Yeah.
And I was very, very fortunate that they wanted us to focus on our studies. So our priority was school, and then working was, getting a teenage job, all of that kind of stuff. That was it wasn't a necessity. It was more so, I remember when I got a job, it was so that I can sponsor my own things without having to ask my parents for money. But not because I needed to work. So I was very, very fortunate in that instance where we never wanted for anything, even if they were struggling. Now that I'm older and I'm a parent myself, I'm very much aware of the fact that you could be in the pits, but your children don't necessarily
Don't need
need to
don't
feel
need for
and
it.
know that.
I hear
Exactly.
you. I hear you. Okay,
Hmm.
so like how was the school system almost the same as Zim whereby you go to O level and A level and then uni, or is a different?
Yeah, they name it differently, but it's basically the same: primary school, secondary school, university. The O level and the A level, the equivalent was junior certificate and leaving school certificate.
Mm,
Um, and it works the same way where your junior, your O levels, you're doing everything, and then you specialize for your A levels. You pick your four, five subjects. If you can do six, you could. If the curriculum and timetable allowed you to actually do as many subjects as you wanted, you could. And then those then would determine what you do in university. So it's quite similar. I feel like because Ireland was colonized by Britain, the education system is similar, but they named it differently just to try and separate themselves from that because it's not the best history between the two countries.
yeah. And is there still like that sort of history? Is it still like that vivid, right? Like back then, like when you
Not
were growing?
No, not in the Republic of Ireland. In the northern of Ireland, perhaps maybe yes, but in the Republic of Ireland, not so much. It is still something that people are acutely aware of, and it can influence a few things politically, but it is no longer as apparent as it would have been 20, 30 years ago. Because when we were now learning about it all, we were learning about it as part of history. And some of the things were still happening, but they were far up
Mm.
north. And so in Ireland, we were just more so learning about it as history, whereas probably Northern Ireland, there was still going through the troubles, as they call it. So that was just kind of like learning history. It's just kind of like Zimbabwean tribalism, where the people in it experience it But then there's some people who are out of it who learn about it, you know. They experience it through learning rather than actually living it day to day kind of vibe.
Right. Okay. All right. So, what did you do in uni?
Oh, I did. So I have 3 degrees in total,
Oh,
and I started off
shit.
with I was that girl, Shem. I remember when I first moved, my classmates hated me because I would always remind the teacher that they haven't given us homework.
Wow.
Um, I was in Zim, I was in the top 5 of my classes. I was in the A equivalent of every single class every single year. So I like learning. I'm a nerd, and I'm a closet nerd because people don't necessarily see that when they look at me first.
Yeah.
So people go and I get offended by that because I'm like, I'm not, I know I'm not street smart, but I am book smart.
Yeah.
And that is not even a flex. It's just a fact. So I started off with medicinal chemistry, and
What's this?
then I did, that was my first one. My second was pharmaceutical sciences, and then my third degree was a master's in chemistry. So I mastered chemistry. So that was what I studied in university, and um,
Plus,
yeah,
what chemistry? Okay.
really.
It was chemistry was a lot for me. It was a lot. I passed physical
I,
science, which is like a mixture, but like chemistry,
mhm.
chemistry. Mm-mm. You got it because those like equations were not doing it for me.
No, I absolutely love chemistry, Shem. A lot of people always say that chemistry was probably the hardest science for them, but for me, it was physics. I couldn't hack physics at all. Biology was okay, but chemistry, me and chemistry went together like this. And ideally, to be honest, I wanted to study music in school, but a real degree, according to African parents. So
African
you had to do what you had to do.
I hear you. So just like because you bring a very unique perspective, what sort of advice would you give to someone who is raising a kid like in now like somebody who is an immigrant parent and is now raising a kid in the diaspora? Like given that you're doing that and you are the kid who was raised in the diaspora because like you're a double intent, right? What sort of advice or something like yeah, that you would
You
give.
know, a lot of the times I never really know. It's never just one thing. Things
Mm,
come up in life as things happen, and for me, the biggest takeaway, the biggest thing I would love for people to do that I find is lacking quite a lot is people remembering their culture. Keep your Zimbabwean culture alive.
mm,
Um, this thing that I see, oh, I'm not going to
oh, yeah.
or whatever language you were speaking when you were in Zim, I need you to keep that alive. I need you to keep the cultures alive. Because we're losing, as we say on Twitter, we're losing recipes. Because we're conforming so much to the Western world, and we almost feel prideful to be ignorant of our culture.
Oh,
People want to make fun. Like I remember when I would half the reason why I don't speak in Shona as much as I want to, 90% of the time someone makes fun of my accent. Like ndiri when I tell you kuti ndiri manyika, ndiri wasi chaizvo kuti sometimes ndinotombokanganwa my Wasu, my Manyika accent because I'm conforming and speaking like all the other Shona people that I'm around. Because if I now say something, they'll be like, "What? Huh? What does that word mean? Oh my God, that's so funny. Say it
like,
again. Oh, your accent doesn't match your face." And I'm like, So it's one of those things where we need to like take more pride in our Zimbabwean culture and keep it alive and
yeah.
expose our
Our
children.
dialects as well. I feel like we could benefit from being a lot more tolerant and a lot more, understanding of the different dialects that we have in Zim, the different languages that we have in Zim. Because it's not just Shona out there. There's a lot
Not at all. There definitely is. So, but another thing that I would do is seek to understand. Like when your child is trying to tell you what the world is like outside, don't stonewall and say this is not how we do things. Um, Immerse yourself in that culture as well, where like my parents said, in out there we're in Ireland, but inside we're Zim. So they also took the time to learn about the different cultures, the different ways that people did things, and then not so much fully assimilated, but then readjusted to then make it work within their own values and beliefs. And I feel like that created a really good balance for myself and my brother, because we were able to find a balance between those two.
Right.
Exactly. And also just teach your children, like, as a parent, um, don't be lenient. Don't be too lenient with your children, because children are learning from you. You are the first teacher that they will ever have. And
Right.
they might not even learning just from what you tell them. They might be learning from your actions and what you do and what you say. Because you can't be telling your child, don't smoke, don't drink, don't do this, and then 24/7 that's what they see you do. You want to be an example to your children, and to just make sure that you're giving them a life that in some instances you never had. Because I've seen a lot of people say, if I've struggled, I also want you to know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a parent, that's not the way to go.
You want your
you know
child to be fully equipped to deal with different situations in life, but you don't want them to be, how Zim parents always say, hey, we walked Netsoka, we went like through thick and thin, we walked this now boats of 15 kilometers to go to school. You don't want your child to do that, because that's not even
Mhm.
like, okay, that's not their
It's
reality.
an unnecessary struggle.
Yeah. But you can still teach
It
them
is
like the realities of life
ex-
according to their reality, not according to the reality that you heard. You can tailor make
ex-
it to things that they might actually face.
exactly. Yeah, so. If I was to give advice, those are the few things that I would say. But if I was to sit down with it, I would probably come up with something a little bit more um, useful and less ambiguous. But just from experience, one thing that I always want to say is to encourage people to keep the culture alive as much as they can, and exposing their children to things that, and learning things in terms of just what's out there. What can your child be exposed to that you might not have known about, and how to help them navigate the world through that. Because peer pressure is very real, and you need to instill your child with such um, confidence in themselves and their decision making, that peer pressure would not influence them. Because for me, it's never been a thing where I was like, oh, everyone else is doing it, so I did it. No, I'd actually be like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's a complete answer. Brenda, do you want to smoke? No. There was no why, oh, maybe I shouldn't, oh, I don't want to. Blah, 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 blah. No, straight up, no is a complete answer. Give your children that confidence to know, and for themselves, that what they believe and what they want to do, rather than just always waiting to see what everyone else is doing. Let them be the leaders, the trendsetters, and, instill them that confidence. Because
Those
when you constantly, yeah, don't put your children down. Like, a lot of the times, no one say, we men so you, I don't know, or for you, we are talking about you might be kiki, but slowly and surely you'd be chipping away at their confidence. You always just need to constantly build your children up.
words. Like it might not be much for you. It might be just you lashing out or whatever. But those words mean things to kids. You might be like,
Mhm.
children, I'm the cocaine, they come to but no.
She won't remember it. They're not gonna remember this or whatever. Or they know I love them. This is just tough love. Right? Let's go with that word. There's no such thing as tough love. In the Bible, love is not described as tough in any way, shape, or form. So let's be very real and love our children, love them out loud, and um be the first people to champion for them, rather than them seeing it from someone else on the outside, because there are people who have lived tough lives, and the people who they would call on first will not be their parents or their family. It will be people from the outside, because those people took the time to show them love and care that they wouldn't have seen in their own household. So be that person that shows your child love all the way through. Hug and kiss your child, show them affection. It's so, like, it's such a thing in Azim culture that I think
Did you watch
it's
the video
only when
where the guys were challenged to call their dads and tell the dads that they love them?
no.
Oh, it was all over the internet, the Zim internet a few days ago. Where the guys were just told, like, if your dad says I love you back, I'll give you, I think it was $20. And
Mm.
none, I think only one guy's dad said I love you back. The other dads were like, say it, say.
It's
Martin,
such a foreign concept.
like it was
It
funny
is
enough
such a
when
foreign
we did
concept.
that. It was
It's so
really
sad.
sad. Like when you think about
So
it.
sad.
It's
We
really
should love
sad.
each other out loud. Never, not wait to say it to a coffin. Say it to the
Ah,
person in real
oh,
life.
mm,
Because of course we love each other, but expressing it is different, and I don't know why.
mm,
But for me, shoo, one thing about me, I will give you a hug. I'm gonna tell everybody that I love you. That's another thing that is
okay, fine. Like,
was us
like the
that I yeah, it was one of those things that I adopted from the Irish culture, because we definitely didn't have that. And then now, but surely, slowly but surely, we're passing it back to our parents, and to their parents. Like, you just see that love and affection all over, where it wouldn't have been there 50, 30 years ago. But because my cousins, our younger cousins, and also grandchildren, the parents that were rock hard,
mm,
that dad that you were terrified of is now doing ballet with his granddaughter. Like, I find that so funny when I see my dad. I walked in one time, and my daughter was literally teaching my dad a ballet move, and she was like, "Put your head and then spin around," and he was doing it, and I'm like,
wow.
me and my dad were cool, but there was never a time that I could approach him and be like, "You're gonna do this dance to me," in that way, and he would do it. Do you know what I mean? So it's nice to
I grew
see
up
that
with
the
a
grandchildren are
dad
softening them
who
up.
would tell me he loves me, so I'm very grateful for that. Seeing what's out there, he still will. Like after a call, I still do. I love you, dad, and he's like, I love you too.
That is so sweet.
Like he calls me on my birth, like he calls me all the time, but on my birthday all the time. Like my mom forget once, I'm never gonna let her leave that down. She forgot my birthday
Oh
once.
my
My
gosh.
dad called me, and I'm like,
She forgot your birthday. But
she
daddy never does. Your daddy's girl. I feel like dads and girls are always like this.
like this. Yeah, co-parenting, how's that been?
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. So, I know you're co-parenting and you're doing like the whole situation, like from what I've seen, is really going well. Do you mind like talking a little bit about that?
Of course. Okay, so I was married back in 2018. I'm sure if you were on Zoom weddings and all that kind of stuff, you might have seen the whole thing. It was a great wedding. Such a shame it ended in divorce, because that was a fire wedding, gem. I really enjoyed it. But I got divorced shortly after. I was separated by the end of 2019 and divorced officially a couple of years later. And obviously, like, I had a child, like, with my ex-husband. We have a gorgeous 5-year-old daughter, and we separated when she was like 6 or 8 months old. So
Mm,
she doesn't remember us being a family. The only situation she knows is mommy's over there, daddy's over here, and she looks at it. She has such a unique perspective. Like, I remember being absolutely terrified of her and how she would feel about having two parents who were not together.
mm.
But she put such a spin on it. One time she was like 3 years old, and she was like, I have two houses, I have two rooms, I get two of everything. And I was like, yes, girl,
Oh
it was
wait,
such a
that's the way
relief.
to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a relief to hear her. put it like that because it was always such a worry for me to be like, oh my gosh, being that parent, that child, especially when she's now starting to go to creche, she's seeing other kids her age, they're being picked up by both parents.
Right.
She was the only black kid in her school, which is kind of like history repeating itself.
Yeah.
But she always used to call every single white man and every single white woman mommy and daddy. Why? Because all the classmates, the exposure to white people that she has is through school. So
Yeah.
her classmates called their moms and dads mommy and daddy when they pick them up, right? So in her mind, a white man is daddy and and a white woman is mommy. And I had to explain to her, like, no,
That's not it.
um, that's not how it works. You can't call every single white man that you see daddy. And because they'll be like, but that's what everyone calls them. And I'm like, yeah, because it's their mommy and their daddy. So yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously me and my ex-husband, we live in different countries. But it's the UK and Ireland, which is basically like Mutare and Harare in a
Yeah.
way. Travel is so easy, literally like an hour of a plane ride. And
Mhm.
she has been flying ever since she was 8 months old, back and forth. So um, I'm very, very fortunate to be in such a good and healthy co-parenting situation because it could be so much worse, like there could be because being a single mom is not easy, and I'm lucky that at least in some instances I get to share that burden with her dad, and he's present and helpful, and our focus is just raising an amazing little girl. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but I feel like out of all the things that could happen, I'm very, very fortunate in that instance. Yeah.
And I'm sure it gives you time a little also to focus on your business.
Of course, yeah. So I have a full-time job. Just like not sharing my government name, I also wouldn't share that on the internet. But I do have a full-time job, and then I have a business that I also have. I am a content creator online, so that's a lot of hats to wear. On top of being a single mom, and so whenever she's with her dad, I also then use that time to rest mostly because I feel like when she's here, she's old enough for me now to kind of just leave her to her vices. She's doing her homework or she's watching TV or playing or, she's over with some of her cousins. There's plenty of opportunities for me to get my work done. And obviously, kids sleep early, like 8 p.m. she's in bed. So between 8 and like midnight, that's plenty of time for me to do what I need to do in terms of whether I'm editing videos, creating content. I tend to create content during the day when she's in school. If I get a break from work, because I work from home. So if I have a little lunchtime, is what we're going to say, during my lunch break at work, I tend to take that opportunity to make my content and then, use that time to edit and then just kind of catch up and, work on everything that I need to work on. If it's business, I have a shapewear business called Majestic Curves. So I sell shapewear, which is basically, I feel like my parents, what did they used to call them? Gata. Bigger gata. That's what they used to call them, like the undergarments that were just kind of those strong, shaping um, undergarments. But now
Yeah.
we call them shapewear. And so there's different styles to suit everybody's needs. And, I always just kind of let that business handle itself. I'm not so hands on with it because, if you need it, it's there. The only things that I just kind of focus more on is just kind of my full-time job and content creation because when I'm getting brand deals and getting sponsorships or UGC content, those are the things that also make me money. And so those things come in on a weekly basis. So I kind of have to keep more on top of that. And I'm
Right.
very, very grateful for the fact that I do have those different income streams because life is hard. And
It
it's so hard as a single mom. You're supporting your child by yourself, and it's not easy to just kind of have, that kind of financial freedom you want, so it's just kind of like I'm so fortunate. Whenever I think about it, I always say that, God really just, because one of the biggest struggles I had was asking God whether or not getting a divorce was the right thing for me to do. And I feel like with the success that I've had ever since, it's kind of been God's way of telling me that this is definitely the right place for you to be and the right thing for you to do. And it kind of strengthens me whenever people kind of want to look down on me because I'm a single mom or because I got a divorce, because I don't have a man, because apparently we cannot survive without them. So I feel very fortunate that I am in that position, and all the success that I've had, and I continue to pray to God to give it to anyone else that needs it as well, because there's a lot of people out
Definitely,
there who are in the same situations.
there's an advantage to you being in a good situation. Like people sometimes are just not compatible. Like the situation is not good for you. And especially with a kid, you don't want to drag a teen and the environment won't be good for a kid. When the kid could have two separate happy parents, they're with two together miserable parents. So, huh.
Exactly. And kids, they recognize all those things. They absorb all of those things.
They really do. Even the little
Hmm.
ones, like sometimes I'll be stressing in like life is just expensive and I'll be stressing and my baby will come to me and look at me and pat me on the face. I'm like, girl, you're feeling this.
She can feel that mommy's a little bit sad and needs a hug. That's so sweet.
So funny.
It's so funny.
Oh,
And really, truly, some of the things that I say in passing, like if my kid is homesick and I have to work remotely, um and then she's home as well, she obviously didn't used to understand the concept that I might be home but I'm working, you know what I mean, on my computer. And so if I had a meeting, she'd always want to come and join in, which is great. Like, luckily enough, my work doesn't mind. Like, all my colleagues, my managers, they literally would be like, have a chat with her for 2 minutes if she does join the meeting. And nowadays, I'll be like, oh, she'll be like, oh, mommy, you're always working, especially if she's on holidays. She'll be like, why are you always working? And then I said it once in passing, I have to make money, you know? And then I heard her repeating it to someone else saying, like, my mommy's working because she needs to make money. And I'm like,
so we love
huh. I
it.
said it one
I have
time
to
in
say,
passing.
Brenda got me lingerie, guys. She did. And if you see me pregnant, and because she got me the raunchiest pieces. So if you see me pregnant in the next year, just blame her because this.
No, do you know what? You need to give people the context. So it started out with a tweet, okay? Because that's how I started
Yeah,
following you. I think you had a viral tweet back in the day, and I just was like, I like this girl's vibe, and I started following you, and you followed me back. You're not one of those people that doesn't follow people back. And then we just started vibing on Twitter, and then obviously, like, you were documenting your pregnancy after the fact. Obviously, like, you didn't
yeah,
need to
yeah.
picture it. And you were, I can't remember what you said.
Oh yeah.
You were saying
I
that,
said
oh, everyone in your life wants you to make another baby, right? And I'm like, we have things
no,
to
no, no.
help,
It
because
was from the tweet of I asked my mom if she had a t-shirt. So I went to visit home and I did not bring any like nightwear. And I asked my mom if she has a t-shirt, like even like just like a random t-shirt. And she's like, why don't you have a
you're a
laundry?
newlywed.
As a
Why are you
newlywed.
sleeping in a
And
t-shirt?
then Brenda's
Exactly.
like, we need to make this happen right now. And
I
she
saw that tweet and I said, no, you're not going to sleep in a t. Like, what do you mean you're sleeping in a t-shirt as a newlywed?
had
So sorry.
cutest, raunchiest faces. And so if you see me pregnant,
It's on
anyway,
me. It's
no,
because, do you know what it
selfish
was?
here.
Majestic Curves was, I'm still looking into getting a lingerie line. It's very hard to do the research for plus size women. I have to say it's very hard. So I was doing that research and I was actively trying to make sure that I can get a good manufacturer, and then getting pieces that I liked that can be recreated and redesigned and all that kind of stuff. So you were basically probably like a guinea pig in a way, where I'm like, okay, this is a plus size girl, or she's gorgeous. Let me send her out some lingerie pieces. And I'm glad that you liked them, because you did send me some photos, girl, and you look hella good. Okay. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, baby number two is on the way. I
I'm
love that. So
I,
yeah,
yeah, if I do
I
have
always love, I do love connecting with people on the internet, because,
it's
again, when you're remotely working, you're not outside. the Twitters, the Instagrams, that's where I'm
Okay,
literally
okay.
socializing.
I
And I'm,
usually like categorize people. They're people that I'm really friends with, and I'm like, I grew up with them on Twitter. That's how, like, one of the ladies who was in my wedding, I grew up with her on Twitter.
Mhm.
Like we
Yeah, I've been invited to baptisms, to
really.
kids naming ceremonies, because of people that I just connect with over on the internet, and it's absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad that we connected in that way, because you're such a cool person, and what you're doing is, especially with this podcast as well, because a lot of the times you find people say that people who are in the diaspora are gatekeepers. They're
Mm,
gatekeeping about the process, about the life, about what it's like being in the Western world. And something like this, obviously, my chat was just chat, but I've seen some really helpful people that have been coming here with like proper processes of how they got here. But for me, my experience is different because I
and
didn't
it's
take
helpful,
part
girl,
in
because
any of
people who
that.
are coming over here, they're coming with their kids. So knowing that kind of, like, having that kind of information of how it's like from the perspective of somebody who was a kid who moved here is so helpful. So don't
Hmm.
undermine yourself. You did give us something great.
I hope
Unfortunately,
so.
our time is running out, so we really have to dash. Girl,
Gotta go. We got things to do. We got mothering to mother.
we
We
got
got
money
kids
to
to
make.
mother. And you got man, you got a man too as well. So you got lots of things that you need to do. And work. Let's not forget about our jobs, girl.
Exactly, girl. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me on here and reaching out to me. I was like, girl, you want little old me?
How are
So thank
you?
you very much for having me. And like I was saying, you're doing amazing things with this podcast. So it's absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for having little old me on here. Hopefully it was helpful.
Was
I
helpful.
really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that, like, yeah, timing is time is an expensive commodity right now. We're grown. I remember being free. I don't like everybody's so busy. So you taking your time
Yeah.
talking to me, I appreciate you, girl.
Girl, it's all good. I'll do anything for you,
Oh.
except something that gets me to jail. Anything but something that gets me to jail.
You don't know anytime soon. No worries. Okay, thank you. See ya.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Out of the Teapot podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and feel inspired by the stories of Zimbabweans making waves around the world. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It helps others discover the podcast. Follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and behind the scenes content. And if you have a story to share, we would love to hear from you. Use the hashtag Out of the Teapot podcast or reach out directly. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep growing, no matter where you are in the world.